Okay, so in this chapter, we're going to talk about the informative speech. I know all of the chapters that we've covered in this lesson have been really short and to the point, and it's one of my favorite lessons to cover because everything is really simple and easy to understand. But I want to make sure that you understand how to write your informative speech and what you should be doing with that information so that you can be as successful as possible on your speech. So in this chapter, we're going to cover what an informative speech is, how to identify subject matter, how to convey your information, clarify complex information, different learning styles, and then picking an organizational pattern. So the first thing is focus on sharing knowledge. So you want to enlighten rather than advocate. You don't want to try to persuade your audience. Excuse me. Excuse me. You don't want to try to persuade your audience to do something. You don't want them to change their mind or change their values or beliefs. You are just informing us. This is the hardest part for some students. Try not to be biased on the information that you're presenting. Just present all of the sides of the story, whether it's a process or something that you do in your field that maybe not a lot of people know about. You want to use audience analysis. So you want to see who your audience members are, what they might know about the topic already, and what new information you can present to them. So who is your audience? Your audience is your classmates and your instructor. So what do you know about them already? Your classmates are all undergraduate students. Your classmates all have various majors. Go back and look at our introductions if you need to so that you can figure out who your audience is and how you can present this information to them. You want to present new and interesting information. So you don't necessarily want to present something that's been done over and over. So think about speeches that you've heard, or most of you have friends that have taken this class. What kind of things have they done speeches over? So an example that I like to give is when 3D printing first came out. I had an engineering student, and not a whole lot of students in the class knew what 3D printing was. So she gave this really fascinating speech about what 3D printing was and brought in some stuff that she had herself created. So think about something new, something interesting that you can tell us about that's going to really excite us. Um, you can do this by doing, like, you can do something like a current event or something like that. The book gives the example of going on to like Yahoo or BuzzFeed and finding like the newest, most current trending subject. Look for ways to increase understanding. So make sure you have a well organized introduction that previews the main points, clear transitions, and an appropriate organizational pattern. For this speech, you do not have a presentation aid. Your book mentions using a presentation aid, but for this speech, you don't need a presentation aid. So for your persuasive speech, yes, it would be fantastic to increase understanding by having that information on your PowerPoint or Prezi, whatever it is that you choose to use, because it makes it easier for us to understand and to see the meaning. But since it's not required for the informative speech, think of other ways that you could get creative with increasing understanding. Okay, some categories for informative speeches. So I would suggest that you stick to these kinds of things because if not, you're going to start drifting into a persuasive speech topic. If you want to send me your topic ahead of time and see if I approve it or if I think you can remain non-biased on that topic, I'll be happy to look over that topic for you. So some examples are objects or phenomena. So the 3D printing would be an example of a phenomena. So it was something new in engineering, and it was a new way for people to kind of get creative. Now it's used to make prosthetics, it's used to make knee replacements, and it's come so far. At the time, the girl had made a keychain, and that was exciting for everybody in our class. People, so if you find an interesting person that you want to give a speech over, that would be okay. Just make sure that it's not something silly. I had a student once give a speech over Wiz Khalifa, and it was not the most successful speech, so be careful with choosing people. You can definitely give a speech over an event. Just make sure it's something new. So the Holocaust has been done time and time again, and so it's not really possible to give us new information about that event. Processes, this would also be called a how-to speech. Issues, this might be a little bit difficult to remain non-biased. You might end up going into a persuasive speech rather than staying informative. And then concepts, something that might be abstract or complex ideas, maybe a new theory or a belief that will kind of get your audience thinking, but not necessarily trying to persuade us to believe this new belief or to take on this new concept. Okay, so you wanted to figure out how you're going to convey your information. On page 327 of your book, in table 23.1, there's a really good chart on the different types of subjects that you can give your speech over and some examples of sample topics. So I would suggest that you go and you look at that chart and kind of use that to get you started. So the first way to convey information is a definition. So if you're doing something difficult or you're going to be using an acronym or something like that, you want to make sure that you give us the definition of whatever it is that you are going to be talking about so that we're not confused the remainder of your speech. A lot of you that are pre-med or biology students or engineering, you use terminology that not everybody in our course will understand. Description, so if you're going to be giving a speech over something, a concept, maybe you want to go into detail about the description of what it would look like if we were to put that into play. A demonstration could be used in a how-to speech. So I remember in junior high, I did a how-to speech over how to make tortillas. And I took all of the stuff with me to make tortillas. I had like a hot plate. I had all of this stuff. And I was in like 7th grade and it was a terrible idea and it was a disaster. But you could totally do a demonstration of how to do a process. And then explanation needs to occur at some point. So you need to explain to us what it is that you're talking about. If it's a person, explain that person to us and why they are significant. If it's a process, explain each step in detail and help us understand what is going on. Some steps to reduce confusion. Use analogies to build on prior knowledge. So those of you that are in engineering or pre-med or something like that that's a little bit difficult for us to understand, use an analogy to something simple that we already know, that we already understand. It's easy for us to relate to so that we can say, oh, okay, I get that, instead of being totally confused and lost the entire time that you're talking. Demonstrate underlying causes. Help us to understand why you're going to this place, why you're telling us about this. So just because you understand what it is doesn't mean that your audience will understand. So you want to avoid faulty assumptions, and so you want to tell us exactly what's going on. And then you want to appeal to different learning styles. This is a little bit difficult in an online setting because you can't really interact with your audience. But a way to do this in the future would be get your audience up and moving, get them talking to one another, have something concrete that they can touch and look at, have a visual aid, talk, have something they can read, so that you're kind of appealing to different learning styles. Again, this isn't necessarily easy in an online setting. So just think of that, and maybe you can get creative in the way that you present that information. Then you want to choose a pattern of arrangement. So we've kind of already talked about what the different patterns of arrangements are. Hopefully you follow the chapters in order and you're not totally confused right now. So you want to choose what fits best for you. Remember, I suggest that you stay away from a narrative pattern of arrangement because this can get a little bit off subject, a little bit boring, not really make sense to your audience. So you want to make sure that you are picking the pattern of arrangement that will help you be most successful in your speech and not leave your audience confused. So if you are doing a how-to speech, you probably want to go chronological. If you are giving a speech about different places around the world, you would choose a topical pattern of arrangement. So just read over those and choose the best one that you think will fit your speech and your audience to be the most successful. Again, if you have questions like what should I do, how do I do this, how do I frame this, let me know and I will help you figure it out. If you have questions about anything in this chapter, about writing your informative speech, about presenting your information, how to record your speech, how to get an audience, any of that stuff, please let me know so that we can get it worked out ahead of time. This speech is coming up really quickly, and I want to make sure that you are as successful as possible. So please let me know ahead of time. Don't email me the day before and say I can't find anybody to be in my audience, because then at that point you're out of options. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take a hit on your grade because of that. So think about it. Think about what you want to do. Start brainstorming, and let me know if you have any questions.